A dog as an instrument of revenge. It had been a long week, and I was looking forward to relaxing at home with a cold beer and maybe a pizza. I set my suitcase by the door and wandered into the kitchen for my first beer. The house seemed unusually quiet as I opened the lid of the Budweiser Light. That's when I realized the damn dog wasn't around. That was pretty unusual. Usually she met me at the door, growling and threatening me with bared fangs. I started carrying treats in my pocket to coax her into letting me into my house. Why did I have a dog that almost hated me? I pondered this situation, searching with my eyes for the dog. I remembered the day about 6 weeks ago when my wife Margaret brought a dog into the house. "This is Margie. She's Tim's girl, but we're going to keep her with us for a while. When you get to know her better, you'll realize she's really cute," my loving wife insisted, while the dog sniffed my leg. I suppose the obvious question is, why? If I wanted a dog, I would have gotten a Labrador, I muttered, kicking the dog to get it to move away from my ankle. "Margie! Ew!" my wife commanded as our guest clenched my calf rather hard with her teeth. At Margaret's command, she let go of me, but kept her muzzle uncomfortably close to my now bleeding calf. "Tim has trained her very well. She obeys me perfectly. I think I'll feel safer with her, especially at night." "Why the hell doesn't Tim keep her at his house?" I asked, lifting the cuff of my pants to examine the puncture wounds on my leg. "I don't want that mutt staying here. She bit me, for God's sake." "If you're polite, she won't bother you. Tim assures me that pit bulls only got a bad reputation because of a few jerks who didn't train their dogs properly. He can't keep her at his place because he has an adult male dog. This morning he was about to get on Margie when Tim stopped him. He said it would be best to keep them separate until the girl grows up. He'll tell us when he feels Margie's ready." "I don't see why we have to keep that damn vicious dog in the house just because your boss is stupid enough to have both male and female pit bulls at the same time. Tell Tim I'm against it," I demanded. "Well, you kicked it, and Margie got to it so fast you didn't even realize it," Margaret grinned. "The dog stays. I promised Tim we'd take care of her." Thus began another reign of terror by another lousy dog in my house. I had to be careful not to make any sudden movements or get too close to my wife. The dog was watching me the whole time. She seemed to be waiting for me to be about to stumble and give her an excuse to bite me. I was practically a prisoner in my own home. I took a sip of my beer and looked all around the downstairs, but found no sign of the dog. My wife wasn't answering my calls either. When I got to the master bathroom, things started to clear up. The floor was covered in dried blood. There were numerous places where the blood had spilled almost a couple of feet up the wall. I looked around and found a small bag next to my side of the bed. It contained someone else's male toiletries and clothes. There were bloody footprints on the carpet and a fair amount of bloodstains on the crumpled bed. My beer was almost out, so I went downstairs for the next one. As I popped the lid off, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw a tastelessly dressed man in a cheap suit. "Mr. Moore, may I come in to ask you a few questions? I'm Detective Cook. This won't take long." "Are you with Interpol?" I asked quickly. "No, and I don't care about illegally copied DVDs. I'm trying to get to the bottom of the brutal attack that took place here this morning." "Well, if you say so, come on in. Aren't you the cop who solved Robert Morgan's murder? The guy who was killed by a guy who thought Morgan was sleeping with his wife, when in fact Morgan's wife, as well as the killer's wife, was being pleasured by another guy, out of revenge, because they were both sleeping with his wife?" I asked, remembering the bizarre situation that all the local newspapers had reported on. "I didn't exactly solve it, but I played an important role in the investigation," the detective admitted modestly. "Right now, I'm more interested in the brutal attack that took place in your bathroom this morning. I assumed you wouldn't be back until tomorrow." "Yes, that was the original plan, but I finished my business early and flew in this morning. How did you find out about my travel plans and what exactly happened here this morning?" I asked the detective. "The only thing I've learned is not to ask 2 questions at once." The detective grinned, remembering the old days. "Besides, I'm the one asking the questions here. How long have you had a vicious dog?" "I've never had a vicious dog." "You don't think that damn pit bull girl you had is vicious? What the hell kind of guy are you?" the detective asked. "That's 2 questions," I remarked. Damn pit bulls are vicious as hell, and I'm pretty objective right now. No. But if pit bulls are vicious, what makes you think your dog isn't? Is she half Rottweiler? Asked the wound-up policeman. Again, 2 questions. You seem to have made a habit of it, I calmly remarked. I don't have a dog. That should answer both questions. So what the hell chewed the shit out of this guy today, a cockroach? Shouted Cook, and his face turned bright red and sweat broke out on his forehead. 2 questions again? You can't get rid of that habit, can you? I laughed. Since I wasn't here and I have no idea what you're talking about, I can't answer any of them, although I'm pretty sure all the cockroaches in this neighborhood are pretty small and meek. You've got to be kidding me, yelled the detective. And why do I get lucky with all these assholes? Why can't I get a normal case with normal people? Those 2 questions are rhetorical, aren't they? I replied with a chuckle. Listen to me, smartass. I want straight answers to my questions. No more games or I'll drag you to the station to continue. The policeman objected, pulling a pill container out of his pocket and taking out a couple of small capsules. Why don't you just ask me a straight question without including any of your opinions and observations? You want to know about the poor fucking dog that lives at this address? I fired back at the red-faced detective. Yes, you admit you have a dog? Cook replied with evident relief. No, I don't. You're not very good at asking questions, are you? Fool, squealed the detective so that his saliva splattered all over the kitchen. To answer the question that I don't think you can ask. It was my wife who took care of the nasty dog belonging to her boss, Tim Conrad, I said quietly, wiping the detective's drool from his forehead. It's not my dog, and I hate it almost as much as it hates me. Understanding slowly dawned on Cook's face. So this pathetic, mean dog lived in your house? Yes, and she insisted that the dog stay with us, so there wasn't much I could do, I answered as my companion showed signs of agitation again. Did you know that Conrad and your wife had a sexual relationship? The detective asked, almost cheerfully. Actually, I guessed it when Margaret came home with a dog named Margie that her boss was going to use for breeding, sensing it was time. There was a lot of symbolism there that made it all pretty obvious. They must have thought it was a good joke. It must have pissed you off big time, Cook insisted. Not exactly. I decided to make the best of the situation I was in. It seems to have worked out pretty well, at least for me, I added. Tell me, how could you make the best of the fact that your wife was sleeping with her boss, forcing you to live with a fucking rabid dog? Demanded the burly detective. I quickly realized that the dog had no qualms about biting me. I also noticed that every time I got out of the shower, she sniffed my modest genitals. This was a major source of anxiety for me. It also made me wonder, if the dog was interested in my humble product, how would he react to a larger specimen? About 4 weeks ago, I bought a large box of wieners at Sam's Club. I took one of them with me into the shower under a towel so the dog wouldn't see it. Every time I got out of the shower, I held it against my crotch, pretending it was a big real apparatus. Margie took it in 2 bites every time. It became a habit we did every morning. I think the dog was starting to like me. Oh, shit! And what did your wife think of this training? Asked the squeamish detective. I always showered in the morning while she was still asleep, so she just didn't see anything. I was hoping to surprise her someday, I admitted. I bet you did. Did you happen to know that Mr. Conrad was gifted with an unusually large apparatus? Not really, but I suspected it. The last few times I had carnal relations with my wife, it felt like Holland's Tunnel, I admitted with some embarrassment. Has it ever occurred to you that if your wife has a lover, and if she leaves him overnight at your place, and he showers in your bathroom, and if the dog is around, the poor guy's wiener might be at risk? No, that never occurred to me, I innocently replied. Did it have anything to do with what happened this morning? Yes, a dog bit off a guy's wiener and swallowed it. The dog was killed to get the guy's apparatus out, but it was too damaged to be used. Now the dog's dead, the guy's got a 5-centimeter, and your wife's been exposed as a cheater. What the hell do you think of that fucked up situation? I guess you already know the answer to that question, I replied with a hearty laugh.